Okay, so here we are at the Central Front series. I get the feeling I'm not the only one who's going to get bored real fast with the game. I mean, old-time effects. My prior plays of it have always bored me. It's possible. It's possible I might not quit. I might play a significant amount, but we'll see. I've tended to stick with things a little longer when I video them. So, whatever. What have we done so far? I've started doing that in every video. This is kind of weird because this is just a part B of the first turn. And the first turn is going to be a lot of parts, I suspect. But what we've done so far is initial Soviet movements onto the map and their attacks in the first impulse of the first turn of the North German plain map, and that's it. I hope by the end of today to get through that first impulse of the Soviet turn, or at least get a good chunk of it. I've only got a couple hours before raid kicks in, but then tomorrow's Friday, and all kinds of stuff changes, right, with the weekend. As prepared for anything as I'd like to be in this game. Let's talk about what the entry hex situation is. I've got 3 divisions here, and then the airborne coming into the Bayard map. Doesn't feel like a lot. I had about 3 divisions here, though, so. Just looks like I got a hell of a lot more right here coming into this corner on Fulda Gap and Hof Gap as well. And then these are turn 1 reinforcements for the Hof Gap map. I'll have to look up to see how they enter, but I assume that they're actually devoted to the south. Over here, I don't think I have anything except on map units to bring into play. Ooh, what are those? Those look like turn 1 units that I didn't bring in. 1 GT. I'd better check back because those are going to be there. But I decided, hey, I'm entering my reinforcements for the first time. I have to look up the Warsaw Pact march order. That's the first thing I needed to do. And I got that here. Different divisions as how they go. And then I wanted to look up to see, is there something that exempts units so that I can move them in like they were here, already stacked? Because I think everything has to enter 1 unit per hex. And that feels kind of fucked up because it's harder to launch an attack with just a 1 unit stack. Whereas I could have, you know, a mechanized infantry, a small armor battalion, and an artillery brigade all together in the same hex, and, you know, kind of double the strength of my lead unit by doing that. Assuming that they could enter in that, well, the first units can't, but you see this one is allowed to bring the artillery right afterwards. This unit brings a small tank and an artillery after it. So if I could kind of cluster that back end, I could get more of a strike force behind. And there's nothing against the doctrine of breaking up that divisional layout. Well, so I looked under the reinforcement rules for Bayard, and, well, I saw them here, and it says, well, I can follow 20.2 on the appropriate game turn. Okay, whatever. Furthermore, if I choose option A, what that is, Hmm. 22.4, the paradrop options. Okay, if I decide to drop the paratroopers, I can do so. And then I can enter units, and it gives a list of hexes on the south map edge, which are kind of these hexes. Those units would delay by a whole game turn, presumably because of all the forces already moving onto the fifth corps map, or the Fulda Gap. Now, because they'll be cutting across those lines. But over here, the base reinforcements rules allow me to enter along the south mappage, and the border's down below it, or along some of these in what they call the bulge. But the ones that enter here only have 6 ops points for their first move into play. I'm probably going to try to avoid, although it would be very, very valuable to be able to push through here, right? So I just don't have that many units is the problem, and I'd like to gain ground more quickly rather than delay something for a turn. These, I assume, are just going to follow up. So I'm going to have trouble getting stuff in here. What looked like an advantageous position where I'd be able to push forces onto fairly deep into the Beor map early, well, I got to pay a price for doing so. Anyhow, still didn't get my answer on that 1 per hex, so I'm going to look that up as well. But I wanted to give you an idea of what I needed to find, and then I look back here and almost fell over, stepped on my sock, and I saw that unit, and I'm like, I guess I got to bring that in too. Rules for my reinforcements here, and that's first guard tank. Okay, I thought I said 10th. I may have. All units may enter by road movement on the east edge of the map. No packed unit may enter north of 3853. There's a border here. Okay. I feel like there's some place where I could be invading from that I'm not being allowed to at all. It's just completely cut off. Now, it may be unpleasant territory to cut through, but whatever. Not that it's unpleasant here, but that beyond here there's some reason why I wouldn't be entering there. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Soviet units may enter on or south of hex 3853 by road, or directly on 2444, which is here. Well, that's interesting. That's a railhead, apparently. Polish units may enter on or north of 2453 by road only. 2453 is going to be that same column here, this highway. So I could bring more Soviets in over here if I so desire, but it feels to me like that railhead is the advantageous thing. So I'm going to launch some additional attacks through there. It looks to me like... I mean, I'd rather push my way through, and this is not bad terrain, remember? Why is there nothing defending that? I didn't hit that. Looks like there's an easy jump-off point, and not worry about these couple of units here. Just try to cut in and bypass. The initial punch across was successful. First unit just got itself in the way to block some retreat routes. Second one came in from the city here. And again, if that river line had been better defended, this wouldn't happen. I don't know why that's not defended. Maybe I was missing a counter. I don't know, though. It just doesn't make sense to me. It was definitely a gap in the line. And you can see I have the formation set out. I'm bringing these in. Each one costs an additional full movement point to come in as they detrain. There's the full advance of this division into place. A couple of artillery. I think they're safer back here. And by not being stacked with Soviet units, it means that I can use indirect fire with them, which is something that these artillery, this guy I think can, yeah. But these artillery that are stacked, they cannot, and that's a big deal because being able to throw defensive fire is very valuable, but I may need to protect my artillery more. What I want to do is start establishing a front line, but that may not be the primary goal. Remember, my goal in the game is to get hex distance. Of course, something like Hamburg, I might have been better off bypassing it, especially with those territorial units if I was playing with them, simply because my goal is hex distance. On the other hand, NATO can say, Hamburg's holding out, man, and use that as a propaganda victory. And sort of both sides could declare they're winning by a particular set of victory points that they're using. At some point or another, I got to clean these up and drop them in a bag. Like I said, they're all going in the same bag. Now I'm over to the Bayer map. Finally, this is what I intended to do. A little bit more careful on this map. For whatever reason, the West Germans are pushed a little further up towards where I might actually enter. Oh, there's a deer there. Well, I assume you can see it because I can, but anyway. Let's say I push in from this direction. I got to worry because there's a West German artillery unit here. Two different colors on this map. And then these are some units that probably were meant to go over to that map. But the two different colors is because I was missing a counter or whatever, and that may be the case with some of the others. I do have to be aware, though, that there is some firepower here where there wasn't for any of the attacks that I was making over here. We did pay attention there, though. Make it 2 deer. Well, Fawn and his mom. Show my column options. So I'm bringing one column in on these 2 roads. This column, I think, is going to come in on these 2 roads. And the third column, which I have set up here, I was going to bring in on these 2, but I'm not positive. The first half of that column has moved forward, and I punched through, gained as much ground as I can. Looks pretty good, to tell you the truth. Did take a hit on this during the pursuit of killing British armored cav. But now, I've got this one. My intention had been plow through this British armored cav and push up in a different direction. An alternative would be to just follow these guys. I'd be going slower, and I'd rather punch through another hole and get through here. I have to be careful, though. Nope, this is a British unit. West German artillery can't help it. But I haven't been paying attention to helicopters, have I? How far? $20? Yeah, I don't think I'm in range of helicopters anywhere here. Okay. Oh, but I might be over here. There's West German helicopter over here. I don't think I'd be in range of that when I plow through. It's really, their range is so extreme that it's really a pain in the ass. So if I go through this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. But we're going to be in range of those helicopters very, very soon. And this one's perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with it, which means it's going to be able to commit itself to at least one fight and maybe more. Because 7 extra defense points on those. Wow. That's kind of fucked up because the helicopter units, so, maybe not. I guess the West Germans consolidate their helicopter units. Feels a little weird. Like, I feel like I should have multiple smaller units in the same hex or something like that, but whatever. That would fuck up stacking, right? And another whole formation has made it on this way. I blasted, it took two different units, a total of 3 attacks to bust through this side. One of the units actually that was involved in the attacks hit this unit, pushed it back, but now I'm under the range of this artillery, and I did not want to have to use EW to try to brush aside covering force. This guy's, got a friction point, whatever. It's better to bypass than to fight a tough fight. That's my strategy, that's the doctrine. Defensive artillery are a super potent and painful thing for me right now. They won't be this bad later on. I'll be able to conduct counter battery fire against them. Yeah, I could bomb it, but I'm not really that worried about that. So I'm launching an attack here. It's West German, there's West German artillery near it. I'm gonna have to EW this. The nice thing is it's mobile warfare, that's only gonna add 1 point. But still, it, you know, increases the defense of this, it doubles it, which I assume. I don't know. This is, I don't know. I don't think this has a mobile combat, so it goes down to the 2. So it adds 50%, but this is not a pleasant attack, actually. Having done a couple of attacks, I am almost out of electronic warfare on the Bayer map, and that's gonna last me the whole turn, right? And I'm pushing up this way into an attack on this unit. I can attack this, though, because this artillery is pinned down by a unit in its zone of control. It can't indirect fire anymore. Assuming I'm not within range of any of the helicopters, and I think I'm not, because I'm kind of curving this way away from that guy over there. As I'm facing ugly numbers, I can throw a lot of air points in or something. I don't think there's any limit to how much firepower you can use in an attack, which seems a little weird. But I've got 14-3 on a mobile attack, or 10-4 on a normal. I don't want to do a normal. 14-3 with 1 air point gets me to a 5-1. That's not a nice table. It sounds like it's powerful, right? But 5-1 in the city, I'm not going to be able to do any damage, and I'll probably hurt my own unit. Definitely not worth it. So now the question is, well, what is worth it? I think I may shift him over to here instead. He was the second unit, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to here. And that'll give me a chance maybe to kind of surround that unit. I'm not going to be able to surround this one from this side. That's too well defended. There's the initial advance onto the Bayer map, and now I'm worried. Because, oh, there's my airborne. Okay. I'm like, I know I've got an airborne division on that map, and did I just bring it in accidentally? Because I really do want to try to use them to gain greater breakthroughs. Coming in over here on the bulge, lower movements and whatnot, and you can see the advances are about as far, although I did get some nice breakout attacks. NATO is going to have to pull back, there's no question, and try to form some kind of line somewhere, just to prevent the penetration from happening. Because we don't want that, right? We're more concerned with defending the victory points in the cities and whatnot, but we also do not want, you know, forces pushing too far forward, especially early in the game. So later in the game, it's not that big a deal, but right now, big breakthroughs forward can indicate positions in which our supply is going to be degraded, because the Russians don't have to worry about supply for what, the first 4 turns, I think, maybe 6. You know, it's a long time, and I think I can get a big chunk of map off of that. It is tiring. It is tiring. The pulsing, the effort involved in the fights. It's you know, again, I haven't played a really big OCS, and I don't know if they're going to hit me. I suspect they will, as hard as this does, and I really should stop fucking buying them because it's just it's more than I want to deal with anymore. You know, it's one thing when I can really picture what's going on, like when I did the Leipzig battle or the Waterloo, or when I do the Gettysburg stuff. But when I'm playing something like this, I'm just so focused on the optimization and trying to get the rules and get everything going right and everything. And there's not much to picture, you know? I don't have pretty lines of troops moving. I can, you know, picture scenes from war, etc. But it's at it's too low a level of detail for what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing is really just, oh look, the forces are pushing forward. Whoop whoop whoop. You know, I don't know. It does not appeal to me. It's almost as big a big blank that I draw in terms of imagery as when I'm playing like naval maneuver, you know, operational naval games, right? Where, yeah, you know, battles I can picture, but when I'm trying to picture what's going on in this kind of situation, all I can get is those stupid maps with like a line and an arrow, and it's like, okay. So I have a vague idea of what's going on, but it's not something that grips my imagination and makes me happy. I feel like the biggest choice early in the game, other than the paradrops, which may be bigger, is what to do about these units. This is the next map I'm on if I just keep going. I think instead I'm going to jump over to the Donau front map and start working my way this way and see what kind of resources I need to push in this direction onto Hof Gap and what I need for 5th Corps, because dividing that up is definitely of some importance. Now, there aren't a lot of units coming onto the Hof Gap map from the south, so I probably have to devote at least some of this, probably quite a bit of this there. But my furthest push forward possible is actually at the Fulda Gap, and that's why they made this 5th Corps as the first game of the series. That is likely to be the biggest push that the Soviets make, is trying to get to a big city of Frankfurt. Hamburg's not far from the border. There's nothing else that big here. What do we got up here? Munich. That's another big city, but it's not. But Frankfurt was, I think that's the capital at the time. So big hit to strike there, both in terms of getting a major city, but also in putting themselves in a position where they can swing to either direction if need be. And remember, the Soviet doctrine is penetration. So this is the place where they're the most likely to get penetration. There's a heavy force in their way, though. 5th Corps is not anything light. The Bayor, it looks kind of weak, especially without those Belgians. I quickly found all my table spaces over here. When I was playing Border Reavers, I was using one of these to hold some additional information. I think I'm going to start doing that. I may have to move the counter trays down there as well, or somewhere, you know. But yeah, I'm eating up a lot of table here and just don't have quite enough. And the way I have it set up, you know, obviously I can't move anything now, but even at the time when I set it up, I knew this was going to be tight over here, but the problem is that, well, I certainly could have pushed this forward a little bit more, but then that would jut this out more. So I was trying to reduce the overlaps as much as possible. I don't know, but this will let me handle the battles, and I can move this around as needed, right? If I need to be over there or whatever, I can move these two little guys pretty easily. Funny how ugly things can get real quick with light units in the way. So here I just busted right through with the 18th Guard mechanized, and I'm going to wait to bring the rest of the division into play until I see what happens elsewhere, in particular with what the 15th Guard tank is doing. But I've slammed in multiple battles, a lot of chemical fire being dropped in there. It's just out of range of the artillery again, and this thing's just not budging. Now, it's almost dead, but wow, it has really kind of stalled me, right? It's sitting in a city, that's a big part of it, although, you know, sometimes you can brush through the cities. One of the things is, these guys are kind of weaker units. The armored units are not as good at moving the enemy out of terrain as the mechanized stuff. The mechanized infantry is going to do a better job. It's got a little bit more strength, but you know, I'm getting held up by an armored cav company, you know, and really held up way more than I should be. My uninformed opinion, right? I mean, look, you look at stuff like the fighting at Bakhmut and stuff like that, and at Mariupol, and man, it was hard to dislodge units, right? That's what the Russians found out, is that they couldn't just plow forward in certain areas. And, you know, sure, this is it's only half a day's fighting. You know, I'm okay with this thing surviving as long as it does. Basically, I'm not sure I'm agreeing with the arguments against the system that I've seen so far, that were raised. I feel like it just takes a different mindset, right? I'm not actually as negative on it in any sense of that. The real negativity for me is just how painful this thing is to play. They're mapped down, I think, and it makes my back hurt. I have to check the reinforcements here because I'm not sure. I've made it harder to walk. I'm not sure that these are turn 1 reinforcements. These might be, which means I'd have some checks coming in. I'll come back if that's the case. Well, let me describe what happened. I mean, you know, the Czechs had a hard time of it. They are not as good as the Soviet units. It's that simple. And used up a lot of chemical weapons to just try to plow through, but got some advances. Then over here, the main advance was that first probe forward. Everything else is just kind of pushing into place. It wasn't a lot of resistance, but this terrain is not the best to walk through by any means. Well, shit. 8th Guards Tank Division is supposed to come in from the 5th Guards Tank Army. Yeah, I read 5th Guards Tank Army. I know that's not available. 8th Guards Tank, I don't know where the fuck it is. That is not what I have here. Shit. I'm wondering if I bagged them or if they're somewhere else. They are not what's on the board. It's quite possible that I pulled them out of way. 8th Guards Tank Division. Fuck me. Maybe there's something here. I'm looking. I poured out all the counters because I should have tracked it, but maybe there's something here that I didn't account for. No, these are not normal units. Those are, I've cleared all the counters. I don't have anything marking this. Soviet 5th Guards Tank Army, Belarusian 8th Guards Tank. It's not on the board. It's not one of these units, although I do have this 18th Guards here, which sounds sort of like it. I don't know what's going on. I got an 18th Guard here. Wow. I think this unit is in both places. Oh, fuck. I don't know. Maybe I'll just say that that's what it is. I don't know. I'm going to look a little bit more, see if I can find it. Why do I have 18th Guards here? Should I have 18th Guards? Should that be on the map? 18th Guards motorized rifle, but it's also coming in over here as far as I can tell. Fuck. Trying to put it together with both the counters from the original game and the homemade ones that are kind of crappy is really a big part of my problem here. Well, the nightmare's in the bag. I found an 8th Guard tanks. I don't know what's going on. And I don't know. The 18th Guard mechanized is not the unit that's mentioned, if I recall here. 8th Guard Tank Division appeared in Boer as a second line and Donau Front as a first line. I've used the Boer version and omitted the Donau Front version. Okay, so that's why it's not on the board. It's coming in on Bauer. Okay. So I skip it. It's in here, I skip it. I'm not going to worry about that 18th Guard mechanized unless it's mentioned here. And then I'll take it off the Hofgap map. I don't see it mentioned here. It's in both battle plans. I don't think it should be, but I feel like this may not, yeah, it says 18th Guard on it. It very clearly does. I don't know. Like, I've got a lot of troops here. I'll think about that. I might end up replacing the old counters here, but what we do know is that the 18th Guard tank should be somewhere over here. Or 8th Guard tank or whatever. I mean, I don't even know what I'm looking for. I'm not finding it. Like I may have bagged it. There it is. There it is. All right. Yeah, so I will not duplicate that. I don't know why I have duplicates of this. Like, this could be a fuck up that's by design, in the sense that he didn't intend to do this. But no, because it's going to be recorded. See, it's recorded as the 18th Guards motorized rifle on here, and I bet you it's going to be in the Hofgap thing as well. I don't know. I'll think about that, because probably the unit shouldn't be duplicated. But on the other hand, I feel like the Soviets have such a hard job. I wish the update had come with a consolidated force placement. And one of the things is, I feel like you could put a lot of choice in terms of where you want to, you know, where you want your attack to be centered in a way that the Soviet player doesn't have that option. He's got a little bit of option here, maybe a little bit here and there on the edges, but that's the big option I have, is how much I want to throw into Hotgap and how much I want to throw into Fulda. But other than that, I'm kind of forced. Now, I can shift forces across the battlefield and everything, but for the initial attack, it's not as balanced as I would make it, and I don't know. But there would have to be limitations. There would have to be all kind of rules to devise it, and maybe it wouldn't add much to the game. But it is painful not to have a consolidated list of where to put everything. So even if you didn't have the flexibility, it'd be really, really helpful. You know, it's not like anybody's going to fucking sue over reproducing, you know, over consolidating these into. These are the big problem, actually. And the rules for setting these up would not actually fit on the, you know, it's not a perfect match is the whole thing. So it's like, you get different unit designations and all kind of weird stuff going on with these. You have additional units and everything. So it wouldn't be a strict copy. And I don't think it would be a terrible thing to have at least created the chart for the North German Plain and the Donau Front, because out of everything, they don't align with the counters that Vollers created. And to be honest, reproducing the counters is as much of any kind of copyright infringement as reproducing all that. I think he just didn't want to go through the work, but, and I can't blame him. I didn't want to go through the work to build it together, which is why I was like so happy to find his version. Anyway, that means we're done with 3 of the 5 maps for the first impulse of the first turn. We'll keep going, but not right now. I think it's time. It looks like it's almost time for me to play Raid, and I might want to eat or something. Oh, here it is on Friday around noon. I can't really sleep. I've gotten a couple hours of snooze in with some video. I did get a little bit of sleep in, you know, another 3 hours or whatever at an earlier point in the night, like between midnight and 3 a.m. or something along those lines. Which is probably the problem. But I do have to go dancing tonight, or I should. It's going to be rainy all day, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to get the sleep in. Anyhow, here we are. I'm starting to work on the Hofgap map, and looking at the check units. Now, we've got some check units over here as well, but they're fundamentally different from the Soviet units. First of all, they're weaker. The Czech army is just weaker. But the numbers on the units, the Soviet mechanized units are more powerful than the Soviet tank units. The opposite is true for the Czechs. And my hypothesis there is, look, these are lower morale units, just, you know, the quality and whatnot. So, as expressed by the numbers or whatever. And if you give them a lot of equipment, like you do with a tank division, it's got a sort of a minimum. Now, the combined arms of a mechanized unit has more capability if the troops are, you know, higher quality, but that doesn't show itself, and there's going to be less armored equipment in a mechanized unit. You know, the infantry is supposed to get out and fight at times, and you know that's going to require a higher morale level than they have present. So, like, the minimum on a mechanized unit is less. Trying to figure out what I want to do with them. Czechoslovakia begins here, heading over, and so the army is based out of there, and then these are going to be East German units coming in over here. And of course, I got my paratroopers. It quickly becomes evident how painful this is. So here, I throw in some air power and chemical power. The air gives me 5-to-1 odds, right? And I mean, we're looking at overwhelming force hitting these armored cav, but just getting stopped by. Like, I mean, I end up taking 3 friction points to the 3 that I hand out, and it retreated as well, but, you know, the retreats were timed for when I got a 0 on the attacker here, and play it out as much as possible, do as much damage as possible. I know somebody said something about, like, you know, attack at insufficient odds, and, you know, the attacking unit gets whaled. Yeah. It's pretty fucking hard in this game because you're looking at like 5-to-1 odds to get the result I just got, which is basically something, it's worse than an exchange, okay? Because an exchange would be if a company-sized unit hit another company-sized unit, or if companies were taking this level of damage. This is a fucking regiment that has just been, you know, badly mauled, and yes, it took out a company. It knocked a company and made it essentially useless for a while at least. Yeah, one more hit and it's in here, right? But it could still be not reconstituted, but maybe some, you know, some stragglers could be gathered up, repairs performed, and maybe some reinforcements sent in or whatever. I don't know. The abstraction of the friction point system is so high. And this is why, like, I get the feeling that the complaint that Jason made was, and I wish I could remember his name, but, you know, was surrounding this idea that, like, these aren't really casualties because you can get them back. Look, the unit this unit may have taken something like 80% casualties in this hit, okay? What would it mean if it forms back together? Well, there's other units that may have taken like 80% casualties that are off map, and it could be reconstituting out of some of that damage. Whereas this did not take, 40 or 50% casualties. That's not what the number means. But it does mean that it's taken enough friction, which might include the casualties. And you've got to, basically, you got to make up your story as to what is happening in any particular case. And the fact that a unit can recover is just showing, just like the damage is abstracting away all the different types of damage there are, the fact that it can recover is abstracting away all the different ways it can recover. And I'm really not bothered by that. Am I really bothered by how effective these little units are? I don't know. Again, that all depends upon the designer's model of the quality of the forces. However, attack at 3-to-1 odds is insufficient. It really is insufficient. 3-to-1 is a break-even point, okay? And 5-to-1 is not that much better. But numbers are an abstraction too. Usually, though, 3-to-1 odds is considered to be an effective attack functionality. And if I look at this and I say a regiment versus a company, I don't know, it's a Soviet regiment. I don't know how many men it is. Or it's a Czech regiment. I don't know how many I don't know how many companies that comprises, but it's more than 3. We're talking about a pretty fucking big comparison here. So even though the strength points are 3-to-1, or actually they're 5-to-1, the actuality and the manpower, et cetera, is probably an even greater disparity than what we're seeing in just the numbers. So, and it's not like it's just pure quality. It's just that defense is so heavily favored in a lot of ways. And small units are much, much stronger. But should they be? I don't know. A little bit more of the column comes in and blows its way through. Remember also, I'm using chemical warfare on some of these attacks. Wherever it does me value, and certainly on these Czech attacks, at its maximal effectiveness. The U.S. forces are the least prepared, or the NATO forces are the least prepared to get their chemical suits on and whatever. Later on, the chemical warfare is probably like in the game NATO, just representing sort of an extra pain in the ass factor of trying to operate while wearing the protective suits. Which kind of feels like a friction point. I don't know. There's another, actually a powerful mechanized unit, so maybe I was kind of lying, is coming in. I am seeing another example. This didn't get that hit. It took one hit out of everything, but I screwed up. Oh well. I think I took one too many hits on the U.S. unit that was there, but the NATO unit, the U.S. unit that was there, forced it to attack 3 times. I think the unit that was here got attacked 3 times too. So I mean, it's not only the amount of damage that these things do, but they're also eating up resources in terms of the chemicals. There's an unlimited supply, but there's not an unlimited supply of air points to deliver them. And again, these are chemicals. They're giving me 3-column shifts. I'm making these rolls out at the top of the chart. And I'm not, it's just weird. It feels odd because units this big, it almost feels like they should just be able to brush aside these small units. They usually are. But then I start thinking about modern warfare and how maybe it isn't quite that simple. The speed bump has a city to hide in, like here in Hoff, and artillery in range, and the EW doesn't work. All those expenditures, and I kind of got lucky to get an even trade-off. I understand that city fighting is going to be nasty, but it feels like most of the fighting is on the level of city fighting when it hits it. Here, you know, I got a result that's not much worse than what. Of course, this is a damn good armored unit, crushing in against some light armored cav in its way. An armored cav company versus a fucking guard. I think this is a guards tank. It doesn't say it here. It's certainly first line by what they do. Trying to find it. No, it's just 51st tank. Okay. But yeah, this is as high a quality a unit as the Soviets have, and boom, right into it. Trade-off: equal friction on both. That means the casualties, the wear and tear and everything on this company, the amount that it's taken for fighting to try to hold this location against an entire regiment is equivalent to what the regiment has taken across its entire span. That whole regiment is going to have to stop and rest and recuperate, repairs, etc., at least, you know, for the same amount of time that this did. And I kind of got lucky. Like I said, I'm fighting here on what ends up being the 7-to-1 table because of, you know, what happened. And that table's not very good for me. It's not terrible, but yeah, it's about a 50-50. But I could have walked away from it, taking damage, and not getting anything. Here I got kind of lucky. The EW worked, and I was able to pin the artillery for follow-through attacks. Then throw another unit into this same ugly situation. I drove up something off this column with the 18th Guard, slammed into that. Lots of resources. I mean, I'm rolling way over here. Got a pretty good result. It was mobile attack though, so I reduced a little bit. But the plan was to try to, you know, close in on this artillery because it's still got a bunch more shots where it can add another, you know, a point is a couple of odd shifts, essentially. A point on defense ends up being a couple of odd shifts. And I just wasn't able to do enough to be able to move it. I don't have enough action to keep going. So now I have to maybe grind more units into there. That's fine. That's the direction I'm going. But I'm hoping to try to pin this artillery down like I managed with this one, because it's, if there's artillery support, fucking forget it. You know? Which is like, I've got complete surprise here, right? Operational surprise. NATO's got, you know, the paralysis. They can't move a bunch of units. They can't do a lot of stuff. But they are able to fire the artillery if I move within range of it. And wow, I haven't checked for helicopters on this map. Yeah, they seem to all be parked pretty far back. This one. Yeah, we're just about in range. That's not a helicopter. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of danger. I don't know if that one's supposed to be that far forward. But yeah, we've got a little bit of danger where attack helicopters could start coming in. Now, those are a lot more fragile. Like, artillery has to be closer to the front line, but the attack helicopters take hits when they're involved in combat. So they may be very, very powerful because of their range and whatnot, but they're a little scary to use up. So that's the extent of what I wanted to do today. Brought the Soviet units in, and you know, they made some good ground, but they were facing nothing, right? You know, I have expended so much air power, so much resource on on this attack so far. I had 60 air power. I'm down to 25. Now, you know, you could say, well, look, you've done almost all the maps. What's up? Well, but this is only the first impulse of the first turn, right? I need to push further. And I need to push these units a little harder and whatnot. And that means that I'm expecting to expend some more, but I can't really afford to. I can't really afford to keep pushing. And I've just brushed past something that in the NATO game essentially costs an extra movement point, I believe. It's either 1 or 2 movement points to push through. It has no effect on those units. Now, how badly beaten up are my divisions? I don't know. It is hard to tell, right? Some of them have taken a few hits throughout their units. Others are pretty healthy. Like this actually made it through in pretty good shape. Sure, I got a hit here, but the main of my friction is from having operated at all, you know, having taken a turn, is the gas and whatnot. This guy has taken twice as much effort. His units are a little tired and whatever. It's in comparison to these guys and, you know, what they take that feels off. It just feels like, and then when I start thinking about, well, how is an actual fight going to happen? I kind of can't imagine being able to fight anything except in set-piece battles. That doesn't really feel like it's appropriate. Like if I look at something like Flashpoint Golan, same time period, should be same kind of technologies and whatnot. Sure, doing a set-piece battle, definitely a more powerful option. But you could still engage in what, you know, essentially is a more mobile form of warfare. Of course, you can also do a set-piece battle with a mobile attack, whatever the fuck that is supposed to mean. Like, there's weird shit going on in this game that I don't understand what is supposed to be happening. Have we made good ground so far? You know, and we'll compare 5th Corps when I get to it. I feel pretty happy about this. I feel pretty happy about the push here across the river. Of course, I owned a fair amount of this territory to begin with, so I had a closer jumping off point there. This is actually pretty damn impressive. It's just that there wasn't anything in my way here. What about here? Well, the border was here, so I've made it this far. Here I've made it, you know, a handspan, right? This wasn't even the border. Like, sure, the border's here. Okay, you could do it from here, but I had to actually come in from off border. Over here, but here, you know, a little bit. Here, decent size. And again, I wasn't facing anything. I was able to punch through. And where I was able to punch through, you might say, well, you're leaving units behind that are enemy units. What's up with them? Well, first of all, I have follow-ups. And secondly, they're not in supply. Like, this guy can trace supply. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how many hexes it is. It might be like 5 hexes, in which case he's still in supply. But this guy, he's obviously out of supply, just fucked. He's so beat up. He's got basically nothing he can do. So he's just going to be a mop-up operation to take care of. In other cases, is there some threat? Yeah, there might be, you know. Like these guys down here, they might be a real danger. But not really, because like attacking is so fucking pointless. Now, consider the territorial brigades. Each of these little things is about as strong as one of those West German territorial brigades. And how many of them are there? There's all of them, this quantity here. You know, just spread out throughout the cities if I wanted to do that. And yeah, sure, there's soft targets that weakens them a little bit, but not all that much. one becomes tempted to use nukes to try to win this game. I will not do it as the Soviets. I just don't believe that, you know, their doctrine allows for it. And you can see, you know, they would have used them in Ukraine, right? Like, as soon as, basically what we're looking at here is a lot better than what happened, you know, well, not in the first days. Like right away, there was definitely some operational ground gain. There was quite a bit of ground gained by the Russians in the Ukraine war. But there came a point where it's like, all our tanks are being dragged away with tractors. I don't know. Anyway, some of these may end up committed to the Hofgap map. I had an option, these two divisions that came in here, they could have come in on this side of the map by delaying a full turn. I bet you I cheated and gave them too many movement points. It's such a pain in the ass. The order of battle on these, in part because there's so many units. But let's see, what was this? These can enter on the east edge of the map now. They can enter a game turn. No, this isn't it. These may enter on the game turn 1 on the east edge or game turn 2 on the north edge. 6th GDT may enter on game turn 2 on either east or north or east of 5th Corps. Some of them will be marked, oh, fuck. Yeah, some of them will be marked as having movement points already expended. So like these indicate how many movement points they get. I think the Soviets are going to be okay. I think it's mainly the NATO units that come in with variable amounts of movement points. But sometimes the description of this Warsaw Pact units, like that little paragraph I was looking at, it gives things by formation, not by game turn. So like these units are part of that same formation and are mixed into that same battle plan. It's fucking obnoxious. And they use a different notation. So the notation here on the NATO side gives you the game turn of entry and how many movement points. It doesn't have any kind of, and the hex of entry. It doesn't give any kind of narrative type description of it. For the Soviets, it gives none of that. Instead, what it gives you is these paragraphs with multiple units listed in it that come in on different turns with different functionality at different places. The big difference, and the reason they had to use a paragraph rather than just a hex number with a number of movement points, etc. The big difference is you have flexibility with the Warsaw Pact units as to where you want to bring them in. But it's a pain to parse those paragraphs, and you might very well, I could see myself very well losing track of the fact that I only have 6 movement points on something. These guys came in with only 6 movement points. They were one of those where I had to parse the paragraph to understand what I had. And it was actually not an easy paragraph to parse, to tell you the truth. The game has a serious pain in the ass factor, going all the way back to the SPI days, even before you start adding, you know, adding 2 games that are of a different rule system to it. It's been unified. It's been unified in terms of like what Volhers has done, but shit, man. And it's just, I mean, there's a certain joy to the, I want to say it's almost like a vainglorious exercise in futility to just play something like this. But, and that's the only pleasure I get out of it. If you hear anything in my voice that sounds like an excitement or something, it's how fucking idiotic this thing is to do. But, outside of that, you know, I'm just not, it's not an enjoyable game. I'm bending over, constantly walking back and forth to move. Sure, I could have something else, you know, I could have like a little permanent calculator or something that I keep track of the air points and whatnot on, or an abacus or something, but I only have room to put something in one place. Now, if it was a mobile thing, that would be great. that track I can't exactly move, but you know, I could see like a phone with a slider, with a set of sliders, and I mark things off on it or something. I don't know if you can, you know, my guess is I would have to program something like that myself, you know. But I do have a couple of mobile phones that I can't do shit with. This is a rare Saturday during the day gaming session. I can't remember. Obviously when I skip dancing, and boy do I hurt. But anyway, I want to start working on the 5th Corps map, and I'm pulling this mechanized division in. I've already mentioned this unit before. It's an artillery, self-propelled artillery. It's an extra piece. However, it's one that was added. It's not part of the normal formations, but it's one that was added for this, where mainly when I say this, it's the Hofgap 5th Corps upgrades for Beor, to match it with Beor. And it's kind of weird. I'm using the Beor diagram. I don't know where this piece came from. Obviously, it came from the Vollers set, but I don't think it was part of the normal 5th Corps set. And like, I don't think it's a missing unit or whatever that, although it might be. But it doesn't match the normal march patterns. I don't know why this particular self-propelled artillery got added into the mix. In particular, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have the will to check. I'm going to just add it to this formation instead of, say, replacing a regular artillery that was what was guesstimated or what was assumed to be present when they did the 5th Corps map, and maybe it's been replaced by that. Screw it. Soviets need all the help they can get, I guess. I don't know. I'll count the units and see if I have an extra unit, but I don't think I do, because I set everything up according to that thing. You know, indeed, it is actually a replacement for this guy. I'm gonna disregard it and throw it in my unused bag and use this force instead, or put it somewhere, because it really isn't. Really doesn't belong in the unused bag, but there shouldn't be additional artillery in the formation. And the fact that they think a self-propelled should be in there, I don't know. You know, I really don't know. Maybe they found something out on this one thing, but I'm sure there's enough mistakes in the orders of battle, especially the estimations that were made for the other 2 maps, that I would rather have an original counter than one of my puffies. One of the problems here is that I have a helicopter in range, and I don't know what I can do about that. Eventually it'll tire out. Ooh, I wonder if that's like my GMT orders. We shall see. The thing I wanted to make sure of, and you know, if I was more familiar with the game, I might have targeted this in those initial airstrikes. But I wanted to make sure that, of course, those initial airstrikes are very highly variable, and it wouldn't knock it completely out. But this thing has the capacity to hit me like 5 times. And that's good. Of course, it'll take damage, but that's going to be painful, right? And it may not take damage if it shoots my odds chart as badly as I think it will. Of course, it can only support the West German units. Maybe that means I devote everything to the US, but there's another helicopter over here. They're defending far up in the front, and that's painful for me. Of course, this one's a 3-pointer, which means I probably will cause it some damage, given the smooth nature of the combat chart. This one's a 7-pointer. That's going to throw me, you know, into the bad zone, right? Where I'm not doing any damage to my opponent. I think I'm just going to get stomped trying to come in here, but I kind of have to do it, I guess. Most of these attacks, by the way, I'm playing Raid in the background. Being here allows me to play it in my bedroom, which is kind of cool. It's not quite as distracting as having it up in the loft when I was doing that. Plus, this is my real account, and I absolutely have to play it right now. I have energy to burn before. Anyway, each one of these attacks, and I'm rolling my dice over here. Somebody had mentioned, hey, why don't you try a dice tower or something? I fucking hate dice towers. But anyway, it would, like a dice tower might conceivably, a small one might take up less space, but a small tray would work too. Anyway, what I'm doing is I'm launching attacks here. Let's see, it's coming in at 7-1 in this nasty rough wood stuff. I'm throwing chemicals in and an EW point, and I'm getting hits, you know, using mobile warfare. Why mobile? Well, because I got these big mechanized units that can get me the odds that I need on that chart. But, you know, I'm doing one hit at a time with this shit. And I'm so terrified this big helicopter is going to come in and just light up my day. It'll be game over, basically, for that attack, if that happens. But I've gotten lucky with 2 EW attacks so far. Instead of a mobile attack, it feels more like an attritional attack. It feels like I'm not actually trying to pursue the effects as much. Now, I gotta find, yep, down to 1 EW left. And my air points are dropping fast. I'm giving the Germans a big choice here. Do they want to throw their helicopter in? I'm not playing an EW. I've gotten 3 lucky EW shots in a row. I only have 1 more EW left on this map. It just doesn't feel, you know, I'm going to have to attack here and whatnot. It doesn't feel like I'm going, well, maybe I don't. I want to clear the road. That's why I'm heading this way. But I thought I'd also strike that way. But as things stand right now, I just do not have enough EW to get my way on here. And maybe I need one for a key attack against the US forces who have a helicopter as well. And honestly, some artillery, but the artillery means a lot less. So the Germans commit the artillery. That costs them 1 friction point. That means my attack is 14 to 10. Right? No, to 9. 14 to 9. The odds are all simple on this, so we go down to a 1-to-1 all the way over here. I did throw chemicals in for what it's worth. And hey, there's no chance that I can do damage. In fact, the only thing that can happen is I will take a hit and they will not. But I did a hit on their helicopter. And we'll just, I think, continue making those attacks to attrition that helicopter down to the point where, yeah, maybe I can punch my way through. This thing's almost dead, but it keeps taking 1 hit each time, you know, which means it doesn't have an opportunity to retreat. Losses on the Soviet units, I mean, they're not that terrible. Of course, I'm trying to attack a destroyed unit, but I'm just getting swamped by this very powerful attack helicopter. And yeah, I will wear it down eventually. Eventually it will be, you know, at a point where it can't intervene anymore. And then it'll probably have to pull out of the battlefield and recover. It's got a lot of capacity, you know. As long as I'm not in danger of being overrun, it's got a lot of capacity to do stuff. But it's really stymieing me here. However, that's not the only thing it's doing. It's also draining my air points. Once I stop using the EW, well, I still have to use air points. If I don't use the air points, see, the air points get me to 7-1, 1, 2, 3 here, where I have some chance of doing some damage. At 7-1, I only have a 1 in 6 chance of doing anything on this 2, because it's a mobile attack. So no matter what, like, resources are being expended in large quantities, and I'm getting no results out of it. But I don't have much choice. This is the kind of frustrating situation in this game that probably is part of why I don't like it. I don't know if it's realistic or not, you know. It does feel to me like these 7-point helicopters are a little ridiculous, right? They're able to just stop anything, okay? So basically what you're saying is a helicopter, you know what's worse? Those are being used when the Soviets have air power. Wow, that doesn't make sense. Fucking hell. I'm going to look and make sure that that's the case, because it feels to me like the attack helicopters should have almost no effect if you can't control the airspace with your fighters and whatnot. Oh, hi. There's nothing in the rules that precludes using attack helicopters when you don't have air power, and that feels fucked up to me. Here's what I would think. Look, helicopters have more of a capacity to like intervene and whatnot, maybe a quicker reaction time. Any kind of intercepting planes have to be somewhere in the general area to be able to stop them. Although they're slower and I presume show up on radar. I mean, yeah, they could be flying nap of the earth and whatnot, but this is nasty terrain to be trying to fly helicopters through. Guess that's the friction point. No, it should be worse than that. There should be some chance of them just failing to make it, you know. Helicopters are very, very fragile, right? And have a lot of issues when used in the combat area. And, you know, they should be, maybe not aborting the mission on some sort of die roll, but maybe accumulating an extra friction point or something just from using it. Anyway, here's what I would propose, and I'm not going to do it, but as a possible addendum, which is if you have air superiority, you can spend an air point to cap that particular round of combat. That round of combat is not, so you don't have to worry about keeping the planes up for too long. That particular round of combat is not an entire like turn, you know. It's not like a 12-hour period. A combat is probably a fairly discrete amount of time where an air point probably could throw some fighter support up there to you know, be able to intercept those helicopters and take them down. Am I speaking out of my ass? Absolutely, but again, modern combat is completely not my thing. However, it does feel to me that it is unreasonable for helicopters to be able to operate when you don't have air superiority. And there's nothing that the person with air superiority can do about it. Just feels wrong. I view the gap opening here to be as valuable as something that might open up back here. So I'm not wasting my EW point here. I make a 10-to-1 normal attack on this. The helicopter commits again. That drops it down to a 1-to-1 normal with a shift against me because of terrain. And oh look, but I do have a chance of hitting. I'm doing the hasty attacks. So on a 1, I can do something to it. I get a 3, that's just another hit on my unit. But I am getting hits essentially on that helicopter. Each time it commits, it takes 1. Going into a lot of detail here because some interesting, you know, effects are coming up right now. So this unit has gotten beaten up, but it still has enough movement to launch another hasty attack. So I'm doing that. I'm still not throwing EW in, but I throw chemicals in. Chemicals will get me from this table to 1, 2, 3, which is a big deal because I max at 1 hit on my unit. If I took 2 hits on this unit, it's flipped over essentially. It would actually be destroyed, which would be terrible in my view. Of course, maybe just as terrible to be so friction point loaded, you know, it's going to take this thing 4 turns to recover, right? Probably 5. That's half the game of the original game. Now, It's not going to recover completely, probably. But it does put, it does really show, wow, that attacking army is gone, or at least that one regiment. But these divisions are just going to get chewed up to no end and unable to advance against what? Against armored cavalry and attack helicopters when I have air superiority. Boy, that doesn't make much sense. So with the chemicals in there, the attack helicopter's in a tricky position as well. It's pretty much spent anyhow. If I want to move it to fall back, I don't have any more. And the fact that the chemicals are in there, I let that unit die. Letting it die means that it does an additional casualty, which was important to the Soviet unit. Now, it's completely worn down and unable to do anything for a while. But I did manage to get that break open so that I can try to bring the rest of the column of that division into play. But, or move it forward a little bit. And also, this is done, I mean, it's got one more shot if it wants it. But then it's kind of exposed, and I probably want to fall it back. Attack helicopters, I don't believe, recover the way artillery does. I think they have a one-turn recharge rate, which means that they do they're worn out. They're out of the combat for a while. And then the question is it worth sacrificing a unit, right, which has no value at all, for ground, which has a value in the game? Will the unit be useful at some later point? Not on these maps, right? If it had gone the second map forward, further west, it might make sense. But I don't think, I think it's worth just letting your units burn out. Again, that's something that to me is incredibly I don't know if it's counterintuitive, but difficult to cope with. I'm used to trying to preserve my forces for use later in the situation. The idea of losses, trading losses for ground or whatever, that is like anathema to my way of thinking. But I think that's absolutely what you need to do in this particular design. And again, it's just not that interesting to me. It just grates so much with what I want to do. All right, so that is the advance of one of these Soviet divisions. And we can look and compare it elsewhere. Feels to me like Soviet divisions have done better every other map. These guys had very limited movement points. That's why they haven't. Czechs, they made some pretty good ground as well. Over here, maybe not so much, but still some decent ground going forward. But right here, that's a frontline, Soviet mechanized guards unit, and it was stopped by 2 armored cavalry units, an entire guards division. Is that over the course of an entire, 12-hour turn? No. Call it maybe 4 or 5 hours of fighting or whatever, at most. And yeah, they were supported by an attack helicopter. So at the cost of essentially 2 armored cav and an attack helicopter, I have completely stopped that division. Is that fair? Does that make sense to you? I really just don't know. I really, again, something in me just recoils at that and says, no way, man. But maybe there's a reason that World War III never broke out, because attacking's impossible nowadays. Maybe they played this and said, oh no, we can't possibly, maybe the reality is offense was deemed impossible. I don't think so. I mean, if we take a look at offensive operations in places like the Near East or whatever, they were very, very effective. But there was a huge technological advantage the U.S. had. I'm done with having moved that division. I'm fatigued in the sense of trying to pay attention to raid at the same time. Plus, I need to I need to make sure that I get my raid stuff done, and I only have like 40 minutes left. Here we are, it's Sunday. Another rainy and depressive time. And I'm gonna take another crack. It's the morning. I don't have as much that I need to do in raid right now. Saturday, I was, dancing the night before, so it eats up a lot of, I had a lot I had to do before the turnover, and slept more and whatever. But now I'm relatively awake and going back to the 5th Corps map to bring in these last units. Now, some of the units are Soviet. They're going to be better divisions, like the one I send in there, than these East Germans. And I have to kind of contemplate, do I want to try to bash through with a Soviet division over on this map? Of course, there is artillery here. Hofgap, though, I have more EW available to me than I do on the other maps. So that's kind of an interesting thing. This is also weak artillery, which means normal combat kind of gets a benefit from it, whereas the mobile, it's weird. Like, really, really powerful artillery units don't have much effect on mobile combat, but a couple of weak units, which presumably is the same number of guns or whatever, have larger impact, like proportionally. Like, so if I had 2 weaker artillery units, I could get 2 points for the mobile combat. If I have 2 weak artillery units for normal combat, I also get 2 points. And you can say, well, that sounds fair, right? Yeah, except that if I have one strong, say a 5-point artillery unit, which is presumably more guns, more lead being thrown, I'm only able to get 1 point off that as well in the mobile combat, although it'll count much, much larger in the normal combat. And it just feels to me like there should be a limit on how much artillery you can pour into the fight, rather than that more units, more command structure would somehow, more overhead essentially, would somehow create better firing opportunities for the quantity of guns that are available. This is the kind of thing, by the way. So that artillery example is precisely the kind of thing that I look at and I say, well, that just doesn't make sense, right? And then I don't trust the system as much, right? So if I start finding things that I'm not happy with, like, look, a little company is able to stop a division or at least slow it down tremendously well. Is that realistic? It feels a little off to me. I can look at Jason's, analysis and say, I'm not sure I buy it 100%, but I gotta say, the game has already shown that they're capable of dispensing with what seems like obvious reality. And so I start believing it less and less. And I'm really coming to the conclusion that I don't trust this system one bit. I just don't trust what it's representing and creating. But yeah. Another division in. Now, this one was a little bit complicated because I didn't notice the attack helicopter. I should have been aware of it, whatever. So I kind of got away with some free EW, essentially, sliding forward. But we managed to batter things out. And in a way, it's okay, because that attack helicopter did get used eventually. And I stopped using it because I feel like I need to use its remaining couple of points to defend this sector. I can't just, focus on stomping one division when there are so many coming in, which is one factor kind of that makes up for maybe the power that the helicopters give. Yeah, a company and a helicopter can stop a division, but the helicopter is expended then, and what it means is the other companies won't have that capability. Kind of balancing act is hard to play. However, having moved these pieces I'm not feeling 100%. My gut feels kind of lousy. The pipe I chose isn't the best one for it. I don't really feel like going to sleep, which is sort of my escape from everything nowadays. But I really don't feel like playing this. It's not fun. Part of it is, and this is kind of reminds me of the Vietnam game, is this, oh geez, I move a piece. How much time does it take me? There might be like 3 attacks in one piece moving. I have to walk back and forth and do all kind of shit each time. At least the combats don't like snowball the way they do in the Vietnam game. But I do find the mechanical aspects of this design cumbersome enough that I'm not enjoying. Now, would I enjoy OCS still? I don't know, Like, I'm going to have to play it and see. I may just be in a mindset like I was, before I came back to wargaming, where it's like, screw it, I'm just not into these operational things. I played a little bit more Raid, came back, and we've pushed a few more divisions onto the board. Got an East German division here. Push there, I don't know, did I cover that? Got one over here. Kind of running out of roads, which means that, things enter with a lot less ops points. So here I've used these roads. Here I sent this division all up the highway here. These guys were the East German division. These guys are that division over here. It was this division. I got 2 more divisions. Basically, I could pump them each in on an individual road. I've got this road. Not a lot of my way there. I'll probably send something there. Just, to clear more access more than anything else. But elsewhere, it's starting to really kind of look like there's not a hell of a lot more I can do, especially since I am completely out of air points, almost out of EW. I mean, it depends on where you're looking at. 5th Corps is out. Huff Gap, which started out with a big 9, didn't use up many. These maps didn't need them as much. So I'm going to have more EW available if I want to follow up and push a little harder later on. Of course, I don't have any air power left to push forward. Without air power, forget offensive operations for the most part. This is what's so amazing about the Ukrainian situation is that they're able to, conduct offensive operations without control of the airspace. Granted, the Russians don't exactly have it because of some of the counter-air equipment we've given them, but they far more have it than Ukraine does. If Ukraine could actually obtain air superiority, they would be able to succeed, I would think. But here, yeah, this is an obscene situation. I don't think, I just don't see how the Soviets can do very well. Look how sort of slowed down I am just by, the 11th Cav and these other armored Cav elements that are the border forces. If they can slow me down that much, how much more when actual units start showing up? Yeah, some of those units are pretty beaten up by the initial airstrikes. So at least there's that. But yeah, I don't know. It's not presenting what I expect. Is I guess what I have to feel. And if you compare this to the NATO game, in the NATO game, yeah, it's somewhat possible to slow down. First of all, what slowed me down here? That's a couple movement points, right? Each unit has to pay movement points to cut through the interdiction forces. So it completely looks at them differently. Here, they're basically more or less able to provide a fighting withdrawal and largely able to really stump the Soviet advance with everything going in the Soviets' favor at this point. you are able to mount some good defenses with decent units. That first turn, though, is pretty ugly. Here, that first turn, look, we got stopped by the border guard. We didn't have the right papers or something. I don't know. We just weren't allowed past. And it really, this system really has what feels like an issue to me. This is just not what I'd expect. Those little units just have way too much staying power. Trying to think what else. And again, the West German territorial units, more of those little units, all with the same kind of staying power. Not quite as much because they're soft targets. They're not able to do a fighting withdrawal as well. Honestly, the futility of the attack is some of what really kind of discouraged me about this game as a whole. And my takeaway from it, because here, you know, this is designed, you know, by the top wargame company, as far as I was concerned, of its time, and most accurate modern information, and all of that. I expected it to give me some kind of reasonable results. Well, what did I learn from it? I learned that the Armor Cav covering force probably could stop the Soviet army. That is the lesson that I took away from this in my teens. And my only thought is either I'm absolutely misplaying the game, you know, and don't get it. And at that point, I kind of believed that because I know I'm bad at attacking. Now I think I know enough to realize, nah, this is just a flawed game. It is a badly flawed game. I'm going to keep pushing on. I don't know how far I'm going to get. Again, you know, when you're seeing this discouraging a scenario unfolding, it's just like, why bother? It does really lead me to wonder why Vollers chose to update or to regress, I don't know, the newer versions to the older one. Because the older one clearly just is not a viable game. It really is not. Whereas maybe the newer ones abstracted more, got rid of the friction point garbage and all that. They may have come up with a design that works better. Of course, it's not interesting, right? The interesting design was this really cool friction point system that doesn't really work. Maybe I'll lob some nukes. Maybe that'll clear the way. Before I dive back in and start moving some more pieces, there are a couple of things that will make life a little bit easier on the Soviet turn. I mean, on the next Soviet activity, impulse even. Okay, granted, surprise attack, fog in my favor for the mobile combats, chemical weapons, first use, most impressive impact of the chemical weaponry. All sorts of stuff in place here that should have made it easier for the Soviets to launch their attack, you would think, and yet they were stymied. However, there are a couple of things that the system somewhere in the game provides what look like hopes for why things aren't going to be as bad. Here's one. Nearly all of the Soviet units that came on the board, well, that launched attacks, came on the board this turn, which means they're stuck with this thing. They must come in one unit at a time, which means they don't have any kind of stacking advantage on attacks. Okay, you know, look, you're not even going to double the combat strength of the big units by putting a couple of direct fire artillery maybe? Yeah, direct fire artillery, you could put another 16 strength points in on an attack. For normal combat, not for mobile, because artillery doesn't do as much in mobile. You also have an additional little armor unit in the motorized division to support it. That can stack with one of the big regiments and give it a little bit more oomph. You can't do that when you're entering the map. Could have done it over here, probably did. But and as well over here, where you can get a little bit more firepower and just combat power. The other thing is there were no set piece attacks. You know, I hit something like this, I have all these hexes like you would be used to in a normal, in a more traditional war game where, you know, there's zones of control and all this that you're dealing with, and you select your units and launch your attacks all at once. The way the pulsing works here, that's not allowed, you know, at all. Instead, what you have is one stack hitting an enemy stack. And the enemy stacks were more likely to be too high than the attacking stacks, which just can't be. But whatever. NATO has a chance to fall back out of the range of those set piece battles, and I don't really buy that they're going to give all that much. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, half the division or something is involved in this attack and all getting used up except for maybe the one lead unit or the lead stack, which is then able to advance further. And given that the goal is to gain ground, yeah, that's not going to be too good either. The fact that these armored cav units have stymied the invasion this much just feels absolutely wrong. We shall see what bigger units can do on defense. I mean, the big thing is, right, to prevent the Soviets from advancing. Although that's not NATO's goal. NATO's goal actually is to hold the victory point hexes or something like that, to hold the cities. It's the Warsaw Pact goal, which is to get depth of penetration. So you might see a conflict in terms of, you know, who's trying to win what war. All right, anyway, I'll get back to the others. I've got some grease or something, cheese grease on my glasses, and it's a pain in the ass to get off. Right. I think I have brought in all of my regular units, and now it's time to consider the airborne forces. And I realize this is what I assumed. As soon as I start thinking about airborne, I'm like, I probably actually should have launched them earlier. Here's the reason. They could have done something effective against some of the helicopter units that are out there. So like this here, I could have put this in a zone of control, prevented it from interfering. Same over here. So some of the pain, not the majority, but some of the really painful places where I had to fight, mainly here on the 5th Corps map, airborne could have actually made my life a lot easier. Do I have a lot of airborne here? I don't think so. I see these two. This, I think, could be devoted to either map, either the Hofgap or 5th Corps map, this big stack. I don't have anything over here that I see. Here I have a small amount of airborne that really couldn't have done much this turn. And I may actually want to hold it for that kind of helicopter suppression role for a later turn. Simply because as I get into range of, what the hell is that? That's not a helicopter. Some kind of artillery. I don't know if that's the rocket launcher design in the new one. Likewise, these guys, you know, they're not going to be able to do much for me at all. In fact, these are essentially like the air mobile units, and maybe they are just air mobile. I can't really see. Let's see what the designation is here. No. Those are truly airborne units. Can they do anything too exciting? Not really. This could. And this could have been used probably to knock this helicopter and that helicopter out and prevent me from suffering some of the pain that I did suffer. I was looking at using these as more of a push the fight deeper behind enemy lines. I'm not even sure I want to land my airborne. Because if I do it now, it doesn't have an obvious mission. Like, I feel like I have a mission to try to interfere with enemy forces, but I also do have the possibility of just canceling this out. Oh, here's another big airborne unit. This is the one that can knock the Belgians out of the war. Shit. I'm really tempted to just say no reinforcements. For the NATO side, over on the 5th Corps map, there aren't a lot, and Hofgap, there aren't a hell of a lot of reinforcements to bring in. But you can see there's sort of a continuous supply of Belgians. Now, I don't have that kind of option on the 2 end maps. Given that I screwed up and did not launch my attacks on the helicopters, I'm becoming very tempted to just declare I'm going to do those airborne launches well behind the lines. Now, one important thing, like I said before, the major training area guys, I'm allowing them to come back in because they're coming in off a part of the map that's not, they're coming in not in a way that would be affected by those coming here, even if the rules kind of allow for it. So I'm going to sweep up a whole bunch of units and get them out of there because I feel like I failed in my opportunity check. Taking the Belgians out is probably worth it anyway. But the force here, I think these guys, I would have attempted to hit those 2 helicopter units because taking them out of, preventing them from interfering would be very valuable. But I really don't want all these reinforcements coming in. It feels like far and away, it's my better trade-off to prevent them. This is the situation at the end of the game, at the end of the first Soviet impulse of the first game turn. Yeah, I feel like I've played a whole game already. Most importantly, here are the units that are out. There's all the Belgians, for example. What's this? That shouldn't be gone, should it? Oh, what the hell this is? That got smuggled in somehow. I don't know from where. Oh, that's dead. That's a, I'm guessing a Dutch unit that got killed. The Dutch and the French look the same, but the French aren't on the board yet. So for these 2 paratroop divisions, and they're not that strong, they're filled with units that really aren't capable of doing a lot. Unlike the mechanized and armored divisions, this doesn't have a lot of capability to be pushing stuff around. So I feel like these drops behind the line take out a lot of stuff about the same size, about the same effectiveness, but that stuff's going to be on defense. And I just feel like knocking that out. Again, here are the units from the MTA. I did find a 39th Guard unit lying on the floor. And I pushed up there. It must have, doing stuff, it was bumping things around to get knocked on the floor. So that is that. These are going to get swept up into their bags. It's going to be 1 bag per side for this entire grand scenario. It's just, sorting losses is a very hard thing. So when I tend to pack up my games, I tend to basically put, one side goes in one bag, the other side goes in the other. You're going to have to sort it out and do a lot of work whenever you set it up. And that'll disincentivize me from playing some of these big games, right? I hope. I don't know. I mean, the idea of cleaning up afterwards and trying to match everything up. It just sounds like a nightmare. Whereas I at least have a little bit of excitement when I'm looking into a game, I'm reading the rules and whatnot. It's not a bad time for me to be doing some sorting. So I'm pretty proud I made it through one pulse. Whatever.